It ought to concern every person because it is a debasement of our common humanity. It ought to concern every community because it tears at our social fabric. It ought to concern every business because it distorts markets. It ought to concern every nation because it endangers public health and fuels violence and organized crime. I'm talking about the injustice, the outrage of human trafficking, which must be called by its true name, modern slavery.
The term slavery has become devalued in its modern use. If you look up in Merriam-Webster dictionary the definition of slavery, the first definition is drudgery or toil. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about are people who are forced to work, held through fraud under threat of violence for no pay beyond subsistence. And by that mere definition, there are more slaves in the world today than at any point in human history.
Now, when you hear of sex trafficking, you probably think of countries in Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, but trafficking kids for prostitution is actually the third highest moneymaker for organized crime right here in the United States. Only gun and drug sales supersede it.
Too many people believe that child sex trafficking is a problem that exists only in foreign countries. But experts estimate that a minimum of 100,000 children in the United States, most of whom are American citizens, are exploited through commercial sex trafficking every year.
Now, there are up to 300,000 child sex slaves in the United States, according to a recent human rights report.
The biggest myth is that, these girls are 18 and they choose it. The average age of forced prostitution is 11 to 14. So yes, we may see girls when they're 18 and 19 years old, but they actually were started when they're 11, 12, and 13 years old. And that's the truth and that's the reality of it.
And the age on the street is getting lower and lower for entrance into prostitution, some as young as 9, the average age between 11 to 14 as the entrance age.
We are talking about U.S. citizens. We are talking about kids in the United States.
The issue of domestically trafficked girls, American girls, is finally being named and finally being addressed as an epidemic within the U.S.
We have a far greater domestic sex trafficking problem than a foreign one. Most of the kids we're talking about are our children. I'm a mother of 3. It could be my kid out there. It could be your kid out there, your granddaughter.
And Florida is one of the top 3 states for human trafficking. Pinellas County has seen its share of cases, especially in the past 5 years. As of August of this year, a task force reports 10 local victims of human trafficking. Notwithstanding this case, 56 arrests and 22 convictions.
We noticed a significant increase in domestic sex trafficking across the Tampa Bay over the last several years.
Children?
Yes, children, anybody under the age of 18.
Type in in Tampa.
There's escorts, body rubs.
On a website that Clearwater Police Detective George Coder often uses as a starting point to investigate sex trafficking.
This is Backpage.com. Here's breathtaking peaches in Palm Harbor. There's 8 pages, and it continues on.
Police say teenage prostitution is a big problem here in the Bay Area.
Detectives in Polk County arrested 60 people in an online prostitution sting.
The FBI raided 2 homes and a restaurant today as they tried to crack what authorities believe was a human trafficking ring in Largo.
That it's really happening, and it's happening in St. Petersburg, it's happening in Tampa, it's happening in the United States, it's happening here.
Their children, U.S. citizens, forced into prostitution. Tilling has told me about a 12-year-old girl she met who had already been a sex slave for 7 years.
People need to understand this is happening. It's prevalent, whether you want to believe it or not. It is. And let's do something about it. Let's make this wrong right, because right now this is wrong.
Once you see this, you can't unsee it. You're not going to unsee the images of these children whose trust has been destroyed and who've been grossly used. So now that you know about it, what are you going to do about it?
If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. This morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics in physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace. Soul generated by love. You can be that servant.